Sorry about that, folks. Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Cioffi on this Monday, the 26th of February, 2018. And thought I'd start it off, and I want to thank weather.us for this. Great website, by the way. He's got a whole, all sorts of stuff on there, weather.us. And check that out. So I pulled up, for those of you who are watching from Europe and the UK, very interesting weather going on today. There's been snow for over parts of England today, and I also noticed it on the radar over parts of Ireland, and it snowed in Rome today, which doesn't happen very often. So I'm just kind of happy that we were looking at this last week, and Rome was one of the towns I mentioned, one of the cities I mentioned that might see some snow out of this. So kind of glad that worked out. Always smiling, got that amber weather warning for snow and ice, and no doubt about it. Now, if you look to the satellite picture that I've put up of England and Ireland at the moment, this was from just before 6 o'clock Eastern time. You could see there's the North Sea to the east, and the moisture that is along the coast, and those winds are coming in from the east and northeast, picking up that moisture. The warm water there is relatively warm. We're dealing with some very, very cold air, so this is basically lake effect snows that are going on, and you can see the clouds kind of have that sort of streamy look to them off the North Sea. The eastern shores of England getting much of the snow today, and also the eastern shores of Ireland. The water distance here is enough so when that cold wind blows over I think that's the Irish Sea, coming off of Wales, you get some snow that comes in along the eastern shores of Ireland. So very, very interesting how this all works. It's been a fascinating learning experience for me, and we're going to learn a lot more over the next few days because this is going to continue. I'm actually going to start with that because I know the folks that are watching from overseas, being that it is now 7 minutes after 11 London time, you probably want to go to bed soon. So let's look at what's happening over Europe on the GFS model, and then we'll get to the busy weather that we're going to have later this week in the U.S. So, by the way, the European model created some big snow amounts for you guys this week. That I'm going to be interested to see if that works out. But here are those streamers for Tuesday coming in off the North Sea and into England and Ireland. You can see them there, and also you can see some snow scattered down through Italy on the Adriatic side here too. Those streamers continue, get pretty active on Wednesday throughout much of the nation, and on much of England and Scotland, I should say, and also over Ireland, very, very active. And then we're going to watch this storm. You can see low pressure east of Portugal that's going to rotate northward, and model runs have been kind of shifting westward with this over the last couple of days, and as a result it is pushing some snow, some heavier snows over Ireland, and then swinging an arm of snow up through England and Scotland. You can see it here, and then this takes us right into the weekend. So quite an interesting pattern indeed. Let me show you what the model is producing for snow amounts. This is the new run, so it might be a little different from what I saw earlier. Let's take a look. Nope, it's pretty bullish here, showing through the weekend at least just about here's the scale on the side. So the lightest blues are in the 2 to 4 centimeter range. The darker blues are in the 2 to 4 centimeter range, and you get the lighter blues are in the 4 to 6, and then you start to get into the purplish areas, and you're talking about 8 to as much as 16 centimeters of snow over much of England and Scotland. The East Shore is getting the most here with that wind coming in from off the water, and also the eastern shores of Ireland showing ample amounts of snow. The Canadian model, which was very bullish with snowfall, was kind of like the European. I mean, this model generating some hefty 20 to 30 centimeter amounts, so that would be on the order of 8 to 15 inches of snow throughout much of England and Scotland here. Lower amounts as you go into Ireland, but still pretty impressive in terms of in centimeters. You got to remember, these places don't get a lot of snow over the course of a winter. So my understanding is that when you do get it of this magnitude, it's a little bit tough to handle. So beware. The models are very bullish with the snow forecasts going forward. We are dealing with the fact that we've got this blocking pattern, this big blocking high that's developing. I'll show you how the jet stream sets up in the upper air, and you can see the block is the edge of the high northwest of England. You can see the south coast of Greenland there. There's high pressure in between in the upper layers of the atmosphere, so the upper winds are blowing northeast to southwest from across northern Siberia, Scandinavia, and then over England, and then they sweep around down into France and Spain and Italy. There's a big upper air low sitting right over northern Italy that's kind of the driving force through all of this. And the block is going to make its way westward, so you're still going to have this very long fetch. That blocking high extends all the way back into northwestern Russia, northwestern Siberia, goes all the way back there. So that flow of cold air continues right through Wednesday and into Thursday. Starts to relax a bit as we go into Friday and the weekend, and then it kind of resumes a more normal flow here, in the sense that the flow turns westerly now in the upper layers of the atmosphere as we go through the weekend across northern Europe and into Siberia. So the impact of the block is gone. It's still a rather cold looking upper atmosphere, but it's going to take on something a bit more, let's call it usual, or a bit more normal for early March, albeit still on the cold side. So we're going to continue to monitor the progress of all this in the coming days. Just again, really good learning experience for me with all of this. Now let's go to the U.S. and we'll switch back and we'll take a look at what we expect. First off, I'm going to load the map up of the GFS, and then I'm going to come back and I want to show you what's going on in terms of all the watches and warnings that we have up, because there are a few. The West is kind of front and center at the moment, and actually you can see low pressure in southern Nevada with rain and snow in California and up through northeastern California and on up into northern Nevada. So that is the energy, by the way, that's going to be coming eastward for the storm at the end of the week. But before we go there, let's get this map up here so you can see what all the watches and warnings are at the moment. East is quiet. We have flood watches up for the lower Mississippi Valley. This is going to be now as that area kind of gets ready for the next round of precip with the energy coming in from the west. We have winter weather advisories up for northeastern California and also for parts of southern California as well. And I'm seeing even a few winter storm warnings up for the mountains in southern California. Winter weather advisories northern and northeastern Nevada, parts of eastern Idaho, western Wyoming, and a few scattered counties up into Montana. So that's all part of that western energy that is coming out. So let's put that front and center now and show you what's going to happen. So, one of the things that we've been battling with here with respect to this blocking pattern is the fact that is the block going to get stronger before this low moves eastward? And it is to some degree. And as we look at recent model runs, the surface low that is coming out, this is Thursday, by the way. I'm sorry, this is early Thursday morning. New system coming into the west, into the Pacific Northwest with quite a bit of rain and snow there. We're going to see some heavy rains across Arkansas into the Tennessee Valley, likely to see some severe weather here when this low goes by through central Missouri. The GFS still wants to take this low up into northwestern Ohio. The other models are much further south with this, taking it across southern Ohio and into West Virginia. And the NAM is kind of front and center with this. Bottom line is that they all kind of wind up with the same idea. That low redevelops, and the redevelopment seems to be taking place a little bit further south. That block to the north, that high pressure to the north, surface of the loft pressing down. There's no cold air here to speak of. So the reason for that is the fact that the Pacific still remains a problem in the upper atmosphere, that there's no real source of cold air, true cold air, to get involved with all this. But we are going to see a coastal low develop, and there's going to be wind and rain here Thursday night into Friday from southern New England down into the Delmarva Peninsula. And I think the real problem with this front and center is going to be coastal flooding at high tides, beginning later Thursday night and lasting probably through the weekend, because of the fact that we have this full moon. Now the low is going to have a really tough time moving in a normal progression from west to east. It actually drops southward and southeastward, and that's the effect of that blocking high up to the north. Eventually weather conditions do improve over the weekend, but you can see there's a big high that's up in eastern Canada that builds down. We've got some action going on into the western part of the U.S. Let me bring up the European model. European was very interesting, and if you remember, I've been kind of talking about maybe that time frame from the 6th to the 8th as being one to watch, and I guess the European model at least heard me, because the GFS has not, at least as of yet. But as we go into next week, the reason why I was looking at the time frame of around March 6th through the 8th is the fact that we are going to see that a time where that Pacific North America index will be going up to the neutral line and crossing over into slightly positive territory. So we're actually going to have a ridge building up in the west, and the North Atlantic oscillation, the NAO, is going to remain negative. So that might open up a window for something. The European kind of went this way. You can see it takes a low up into Canada south of James Bay, and a secondary low develops along the Virginia coast. But there's a fairly impressive upper trough with this, with a bit of a polar connection to it. So there's some colder air getting involved. So the European actually did go kind of crazy with this, cutting it off the southern New England coast. Now, let me just put this right up front. The fact that the model has a very odd structure in terms of the upper air, and the fact that it's showing it now probably means there's a pretty good bet that it's not going to show it in subsequent runs. But one of the things that the European does, and the Canadian does it also, but the GFS doesn't do, is that the European holds on to this blocking high in eastern Canada, and that forces energy underneath it. And you can follow the flow here. The flow is coming from central Canada into the Great Lakes and into the east once this pattern is set up. So this is a colder flow of air, but it's all predicated on the fact of that's blocking high. When the initial blocking high breaks down, and you can see it here, how strong it is when it moves over Greenland. There's our system now out in the Atlantic from Friday, so it's already well out to the east. But you still have that blocking signature with the jet way to the south. But that upper high breaks down to somewhat, and then starts to build back late in the period. It makes a reappearance, and it's much further south this time around. When we look at the Canadian model, the Canadian model's upper air has kind of a similar idea. In fact, the Canadian has a much stronger ridge up the west coast, so that's an interesting variation versus the European. But it does signal that Pacific North America index is going positive. Also, if it's right, with this deep upper low sitting along 160 and extending southward, deep trough down to Hawaii, that could be the driver for the positive PNA. The GFS does not quite go this route. The GFS, still, tries to bring in some ridging, but it doesn't really redevelop that upper high in eastern Canada. It tries, but it's nowhere close. And as a result, you have a much broader, flatter look in the eastern part of the United States versus the European and the Canadian. So it remains to be seen, which model is going to gain the upper hand with this going forward. One of the big keys will be probably that trough that's out along 160 west down to Hawaii, because that will force the ridge up along the west coast. So the only thing I will say is, usually when you have a blocking high of this magnitude, sometimes models want to break them down a little too quickly. So we could find that the GFS may cave in subsequent runs, but I don't want to put a whole lot of faith in that, if only because of the fact that we know that the European and the Canadian, they've had their moments, but for the most part this winter they haven't worked too well. Neither has the GFS for that matter. So I guess we're kind of going to be in no man's land at this point until we can figure out which model has a better view of things going forward. I don't expect, by the way, from the system on Thursday or Friday, at least right now, based on what I'm seeing on the upper air, I'm really not expecting much in the way of snow, except maybe in elevation-driven areas, in elevated areas where snow might occur, that'll be elevation-driven. That becomes more and more typical as you move into the springtime months. The second system may be a different story, but we got to get there first. So the Irish Met Office and the UK Met Office have named your system Emma. I guess that's the one for Thursday into Friday and the weekend. Very interesting that, we were going to have to deal with our storm in the northern mid-Atlantic and parts of the Northeast for Thursday night into early Saturday. You guys are going to be dealing with the storm too. You've got snow on the equation. We've got coastal flooding, and for most places rain on our equation, always smiling. Let's see. You got 60, Martha Gunter, yesterday. Nice to there. We didn't get out of the low 40s out where I am. I know you're in western North Carolina. Looking forward to the next 2 days here, where we'll be at least into the 50s with sunshine. Clouds took all day long to get out of the way today. Just trying to get. Europeans has quite a bit of snow over the next 10 days. All of that is the back end, Timothy Veltman. That's for that second system. It really doesn't do too much with the first. But we'll have to see. Which model is going to be right on the blocking in eastern Canada? That's the big question. David Schwartz, you know what? I got to tell you, I'm not really all that impressed right now with the dynamics with this. I mean, there's a fairly well-developed upper low. It drops, moves over the Delmarva Peninsula, but it's, I don't know. I don't know if there's enough here to produce. Maybe in some of the higher elevations might get some snow out of this, but I'm not really overly excited about it at this point. With regards to Thursday night into early Saturday, I could be wrong. But we'll see. And, the problem with, I have to tell you, the problem with a system like this and trying to figure out if there's going to be any snow in the mix is you really can't see it that well this far out. It's different from when you're dealing with the other systems where snow is actually on the table and the air is cold enough. This one, being that it's more problematic to figure, you really kind of have to wait until you're inside the 60-hour time frame. Then you might get a pretty good judge of just what the actual column of the atmosphere looks like, how cold, how unstable, and then we can go from there. So I think maybe Wednesday we'll be able to come back to that question and see if it's changed, anything has changed. Let's see. Patrick B. Models forecasting such a strong deep low would bring more cold air, especially inland areas like Albany, New York. That's true, Patrick, but to some extent. However, bear in mind that there will be a northern cutoff to all this. So how far north it gets, it remains to be seen. It's going to get. It will, I think, get up into parts of central and upstate New York, but then you're going to see that area gradually start being pulled southward as the low begins to drop southward. So I don't know how much you're going to get up along I-90 with all of this. Going to have to wait and see. Lee Goldberg, who listens to every word I say, by the way. Lee Goldberg going for an inch or two of rain. I think that's reasonable. I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation in terms of rain. I think the bigger deal, again, I just want to say the bigger deal with the system for Thursday night into early Saturday, I think is going to be the coastal flooding because of the full moon situation, and less so in terms of wind and in terms of rain. And there'll be gales and storm force winds off and just offshore. I don't know how strong the wind is going to be inland, but just offshore, it'll we're certainly going to see gales. Let's see. Oh, Weatherman Nick, you got the sun out finally right before sunset. I know it's been a fight here all day long. Yeah, Abaddon, I'm thinking, an inch or two of rain is a fair forecast. Amounts are going to go down to some degree as you go north and west, but I'm thinking, an inch or two probably looks good. What will it take to get snow to fall in Philadelphia? Well, maybe don't win the Super Bowl. I'm sorry, just kidding, Orlando Figueroa. I don't know that you're going to have it on this. You're going to need cold air to actually come down out of Canada and take over for a couple of days, which is always possible down the road. But I don't think you're going to see it with this particular system. Trying to make sure I get to everybody's questions. If anyone, I know Always Smiling, thank you so much for keeping us posted on what's going on. The worst weather there since 1983. Wow. Appreciate you keeping us up to date on what's going on your side of the Atlantic. And at any time, anybody here who's in that, who's on the other side in Europe, I'd love to hear from somebody in Italy where it snowed in Rome today, because it doesn't really snow in Rome very often. Every once in a while it does, but this might be the first time in a couple of years that I can remember. But if there's anybody on, if they could leave a comment over the next couple of days when we do these live streams, we really would love to hear from you. All right, folks, going to call it a night here. So right now, at least the weather relatively quiet around the U.S., except for some of the action that's going on in the western states, and it's all going to rev up later this week. So we're going to pay attention to that, and also continue to pay attention to the cold, and in some places in Europe, the unprecedented cold and snow that is going on, and that's going to carry you folks in Europe through this week. And yes, Joshua Pan, volatility in the long range, and that's what you're going to continue to see. And maybe we could see if we could I'll bring on Joe Rayo over the next day or two, and we will the both of us will get into what's happening. We'll be on together tonight at 9:15 on my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Cioffi. So by all means, join us there on my Facebook page, which you can link to straight here from my YouTube channel. The link is on the top banner on the channel page, or just go to Facebook and type in meteorologist Joe Cioffi, and I should come up. Okay? Have a great rest of your Monday. We will see you either later or tomorrow.